Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm a social studies educator, historian, and host of this, the Everything is a Primary Source podcast. I'm also an avid collector of popular culture artifacts. I love what I find at thrift store outlets, garage sale leftovers, and what I spot just making my way around the built world. I enjoy sorting through boxes of free books and magazines, not to mention online collections like Internet Archive, and of course the Library of Congress. But you don't need to spend your time digging through bins or following online rabbit holes to get a look into the past. The movies and TV we watch, the books we read, and the games we play are all documents of the past. So is fashion, food, music, toys, even the roads we travel on and the places we live and work in. Everything is a primary source. This podcast is the result of exhibiting these kinds of artifacts in public, getting passersby to select an item they connect with, and then chatting with me to see what it says about the time, place, and people who made it. The conversation you are about to hear, therefore, is your history, my history, our history, through popular culture. Yeah, I'm so glad to have you here at the Ephemera Fair in Old Greenwich, Connecticut, and you know the student that gave me that. Do you know what her name is?
Was it Sylvia?
No, actually it wasn't. It's my little joke. So you're going to talk to us about a popular science magazine cover. That's unfortunately all we have left of it is the cover, but that to you is the most captivating part, was the cover art for this. And I'll obviously, when I put this as a podcast, I'll have a picture of it so that listeners know what we're talking about. But I mean, popular science as a title is a long-standing magazine title, but what drew you to this one?
I think what initially drew me to this is something that's drawn me to a lot of these sort of science magazines, which is that this particular style of illustration, I'm not sure if it's I think it's sort of the line quality, but also the colors and the way that they're doing these sort of oils or acrylics really reminds me of early sci-fi covers as well. So things like I always get the first and last words mixed up, but Weird Tales or Amazing Stories, all those sort of great serialized ones. The pulps as well. Something about this sort of very dramatic kind of Boy Scouty looking guy with the wackiness of the fire explosion in the back.
The way it's drawn, it makes it look like we're to understand he created that volcano eruption. Like he's not measuring it. He's like calling it in.
when I first saw this, I didn't even notice the words in the corner. It says "Sleeping volcano flames at touch of electric key."
Oh, I guess he is. Yeah.
I guess he's playing this volcano with what looks like
So he's playing God,
radio xylophone or something. Yeah.
Well, it seems it fits pretty well, with the era of. I mean, it's very dramatic. It's very, you mentioned almost movie-like. I mean, we're talking mid-1920s, so the movies are absolutely coming in as a major pop culture force, mass media force. And I'm thinking about where popular science, I mean, it's in the name of the magazine, it's popular. It's not meant to be, this isn't a journal for scientists to be writing. It's meant to be accessible by the ordinary person. I'm picturing the newsstand that you would find this would probably be bumping up to it, like just right next to it would be like the pulp covers and maybe even early comic books. I know comic books hadn't really emerged the way that we know them quite yet in the 20s, but those kinds of like Fantastic Tales or thriller magazines and things like that. It was like, I'm imagining the cover artist probably worked for a lot of those. This is a painting, though. I mean,
for sure. Yeah, that was something I was. This had come up in the conference I was just at with somebody who has studied these popular science magazines, and she wasn't sure, but I'd been curious if it was the same artists doing these works, which would not be surprising given that they were presumably all just contracted for individual pieces.
Like Norman Rockwell and Saturday Evening Post. Like he just
And speaking of Rockwell, I feel like another thing that kind of connects this era of these fantastical things that at least I don't see in the sort of later, maybe like 70s or 80s fantasy, is this like very like normative masculinity. Like this guy looks like, a Boy Scout. He's got like, rippling arm muscles and this particular kind of like manly aesthetic to kind of like very goofy images feels like also sort of really indicative of the era and certainly of the audience they're going for.
Yeah, the 20s seem to be a pretty defining era for gender. Like, how would you project your gender, right? Like, women is the first era of women showing a lot of flesh, right? They were, some more than others, but wearing hemlines were getting shorter. And for men, it absolutely seemed like the early versions of the Superman, not Superman the comic character, but the very masculine and strong, and even a scientist guy could be this rippling biceps and triceps, and of course he's creating volcanoes because he is a god among us. I love on the inside cover. There's an ad. I think it's for Ford or
it's for Ford.
And it's very different from the cover, and of course it's an ad, so it's not quite the same point of it, but it's a very agrarian, for a car company to have the car as small as possible in the image. It's like, why even have it?
Yeah, it really reminds me of like the last maybe 20 years worth of like Budweiser advertisements, really leaning into a particular idea of, rural American life to sort of very tangentially tie in a product.
Yeah. What year is that from?
This one looks like it's 31, I believe.
Oh, it's okay. It's 31. I thought it was 20s. I guess it's may well be the 20s. Because I have this calendar from 1926, and I don't know what happened to the top part, but the imagery is very similar to me. Of very, this one almost looks colonial in a way. And he's using a scythe, which nobody actually used even in the 1860s, but to try to have very like spiritual thing, and it just reminds me of in that picture, and really this whole cover, both sides of it, speaks to the two Americas that existed in the 20s, and I imagine by 1931 they hadn't evaporated quite yet. It exists for a long time, and that would be urban versus rural, encapsulated a lot of times with the Scopes monkey trial, right? Science versus nature, science versus religion. And so with popular science, do you think that part of the reason why, and we just have one cover here, but I'm sure if we were to line up a lot of them, like you said the presenter earlier did, would you see sort of like an inclusive nature to it, that they're trying to appeal to all, not just the urban metropolitan, like by making it popular science, it's trying to show appeal to even rural America.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the sort of great things about magazines in general is that sort of like geographic democratizing. It's not something I have thought quite as much about with like popular science, but certainly with, like magazines like Sears and stuff were huge in sort of opening up, I mean, in that sense, buying power for people in more rural areas, and especially folks who couldn't or didn't feel comfortable in like sort of local stores. But I can imagine in a sort of similar way, right? Like something like popular science, where you're receiving it in your home, really has that same kind of sort of broad geographical kind of democratizing influence.
Yeah, because if you were to look at any of their publication locations, I'm sure New York City, Chicago, it'd be a metropolitan area that these are coming out of. Even the more rural themed ones, like Better Homes and Gardens, would probably still be published from one of the big cities. And I love that expression of democratizing even something like literature. I mean, we can't overlook, this is the mass media era where they're trying to, even if it wasn't intentional, bind the country together and unify the country through as much commonality as possible.
Yeah.
And by putting that title once again, popular. It's just like popular mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the longest time, when I saw the titles of Popular Science and Popular Mechanics, which I think are still being published, I don't think they've left us.
Yeah.
I always thought it meant like they were telling us what was popular, and I'm like, I'm not interested in that at all. Like I don't care about science. I don't care about mechanics and stuff like that. I'm like, but it wasn't until afterwards. I'm like, oh, they mean like this is like layman's terms of things. They're not going to give us. It's not going to be page after page of equations or, laboratory observations. It's going to be more like, hey, can a man run as fast as a motorcycle, or can drive,
Yep.
So, thank you so much for taking the few minutes that you had to
Absolutely.
talk about this with me. I hope it's not the last time that we interact. And
I will say, before we stop, I have one more fun little thought. The math comment reminded me. In terms of another thing I enjoy about ephemera is like science of wear. And something that I really like about this is twofold. One is somebody's practiced long division in the corner, which is great. But on the sort of other end, which is like, oh, it's just scrap paper. But you can see that there's pinholes in all of the four corners, as well as a truly impressive collection of them in the center as well. But the corner ones really suggested that somebody like ripped this off of their magazine and then put it up as art, which I really like, that kind of second life for, kids or folks who are clearly excited about these magazines and and about the art specifically, and giving it this sort of second life in their homes beyond just the content.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that I decided to come to this Ephemera Fair, because only here can I get conversations that have these kinds of ideas. Sylvia, thank you so much for talking about this with me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the fair.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. Popular culture, by definition, connects and unites us, and proves that people of different backgrounds, in fact, have a lot in common with one another. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, at least in part, for that reason. If it connects with you and you'd like to add to it, or any of the podcast episodes, just visit everything-history.com and search for the Everything is a Primary Source project, which can be found in the classroom section of the website. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Be sure to rate and share this podcast wherever you are listening to it now, and follow Everything as a Primary Source on social media, including YouTube and especially Instagram. Thank you for listening to the EPS podcast, where everything is a primary source.